continue sabotaging the hostage release deal negotiations? Why do you remain silent in the face of his actions? Why do you not come out and tell the public, as Gallant has done, how Netanyahu tirelessly takes action to sabotage the hostage release deal?
In other news, thousands of people can now safely drink their tap water again following a parasite outbreak. South West Water has today reduced the boil water notice in the Brixham area following all clear test results. The number of confirmed cases of cryptosporidium in the Brixham area are 46, but the water company has confirmed it is now safe for around 14,500 households in the Alston supply area to use their tap water as normal. But they're still advising around 2,500 properties in Hillhead, upper parts of Brixham and Kingswear to continue to boil their drinking water before consuming it. Meanwhile, Olympian Dame Kelly Holmes has joined protesters today demonstrating about poor water quality. 37 protests took place today, including in Brighton, Falmouth and Edinburgh. Water companies say they're spending more than £14 billion this year to protect waterways in England and Wales, but campaigners are demanding tougher action. And Tyson Fury says boxing fans should expect fireworks when he takes on Alexander Usyk tonight as they finally go head-to-head to become the undisputed world heavyweight boxing champion. Both fighters, undefeated at professional level, had to be separated by security at an eventful weigh-in last night. Fury's final interview before the showdown had so many expletives it's not broadcastable. Around 3,000 British fight fans have travelled to Saudi Arabia for tonight's clash. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Mark.
Packing a punch this evening, it is Mark Dolan tonight. My thanks to Sophia Wensler, who returns in an hour's time. In my big opinion, if Donald Trump wins the US elections, will the special relationship be safe in the hands of Labour? I have my doubts. Find out why in just a moment. My Mark Meets guest is the author of a shocking book about the rise of Adolf Hitler. How did this monster capture a nation and threaten the world? And could something like this ever happen again? In the big story, after another bruising week for the BBC, and as an almighty row breaks out over the corporation's plan to put adverts on their podcasts, is it time to scrap the licence fee altogether? And in my take at 10, Harry and Meghan celebrate their 6th wedding anniversary this weekend. Is it a marriage made in heaven or hell? I'll be giving my verdict at 10. Reacting to those stories and many more tonight, my top pundits, we have the Green Goddess herself, broadcaster and national treasure Diana Moran. We also have Fleet Street loyalty in our midst, former editor of the News of the World, the king of the scribblers himself, Neil Wallace. And last but not least, comedian, broadcaster and tropper of truth bombs, Sajila Kershi. Plus, the most important part of the show, your emails and messages. They come straight to my laptop, gbnews.com/your say. And this show, Mark Dolan Tonight, has a golden rule. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. So, Mark Dolan Tonight, your perfect Saturday night in. Crack open a bottle of something cold and fizzy, or fire up the kettle, and let's get to work. Given that the under fire but unflappable Donald Trump may well win the race for the White House in November, it's a deep concern that one of the most senior figures in the Labour Party, London Mayor Sadiq Khan, has gone on record this week calling Donald Trump a racist, a sexist and a homophobe. Now, I'm no Donald Trump cheerleader, and I'm disappointed that Biden versus Trump is the best America has to offer in a few months' time. But the racism allegation is confusing, given Trump's growing support among African-American voters, fed up with the woke BS under Joe Biden. And his running mate as potential vice president this time round will likely be a man of colour in the form of Senator Tim Scott, who may one day go on to become a great president. Claims of sexism are confusing too, when tens of millions of American women will vote for Trump this autumn, as they did 2 times previously. Talking about sexism, is Trump as sexist as Democratic icon Bill Clinton, who debased a poor intern in the Oval Office, leading to a significant dry cleaning bill? You tell me. And if Trump is homophobic, well, explain that to his group of supporters who are known as Gays for Trump. Spare me the meaningless labels that Khan and his Labour mates like to chuck out at anyone who dares to challenge them or reject their divisive identity politics. Don't forget, it was Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting who said that anyone who voted for the Conservative mayoral candidate in London, Susan Hall, was a racist, an Islamophobe or a white supremacist. Hall is on record as saying that those comments put her in danger. The comments were also offensive and wrong, but these are the nice people, the be kind crowd. Do keep up. It's pretty clear that a large portion, if not all, of the Labour Party detest Donald Trump, which is a big headache given that Labour will likely be in power very shortly. Why is this important? Well, America is the biggest single investor in the UK. They are a key cultural, political, economic, diplomatic and military ally. Our 2 nations came together in the Second World War to defeat Hitler, and in the 1930s under Thatcher and Reagan to preside over an economic miracle and the collapse of the Iron Curtain. Well, there's a huge risk that Labour will erect a big red curtain between Britain and America should they win power and if Trump gets in, particularly given Khan's recent comments. If Britain is hoping for that transformative trade deal with the United States, I won't hold my breath if Starmer is in number 10. Look, Donald Trump is chaotic. I'm not sure he's fit for high office. I don't think he's honest. I don't like his attitude to women. And the January the 6th riots on the Capitol were a moment of national shame for America. And Trump helped fan those flames. Plus, it's wrong, notwithstanding concerns about voting irregularities, that he did not concede the election in 2020. If I'm honest, I'd far rather the dynamic Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, becoming president, given his bold and brave leadership during the pandemic, in which he pushed back on the madness of lockdowns, mask mandates and vaccine tyranny. He also said Florida is where woke goes to die. Heaven. A military hero and an unparalleled public administrator, Ron DeSantis embodies the values of freedom and self-responsibility, and he leads by them. And don't forget, it was Trump who was responsible for the first of those ruinous and, in my view, failed lockdowns. But right now, it's a choice between flawed maverick Donald Trump and confused Joe Biden, for whom it's always bedtime. Trump has energy and conviction. He didn't start any wars whilst in office. He saw the economy grow and he attempted to engage with global bad actors like Xi Jinping of China, Vladimir Putin of Russia and Kim Jong-un of North Korea. Meanwhile, Joe Biden, who has more nurses these days than security guards, presided over America's humiliating departure from Afghanistan. He censored lockdown critics on social media during the pandemic. He has allowed wokery to infiltrate America's great public institutions, and he has borrowed yet more billions to prop up the pyramid scheme that is the US economy. Under those circumstances, Trump, though a compromise, has to be preferable. So with prominent figures in the party like Mayor Khan attacking Trump, can Labour be trusted with the special relationship, or will it end in a costly divorce? Your reaction, and let's get to your opinions very shortly. gbnews.com/your say. But first, my top pundits this evening. The Green Goddess herself, a broadcaster and national treasure, Diana Moran. We also have the fabulous comedian, actor and playwright Sajeela Kershi, and Fleet Street royalty, former executive editor of the News of the World, Neil Wallace. Great to have all three of you with me. Let me get your reaction to this, first of all, Diana Moran. Is the special relationship safe in Labour's hands?
I'm not sure that it is. It does seem that it's going to be Trump who gets in, and wouldn't we prefer him to Biden? Because at least, you know, he thinks more straight than the other chap.
Is that your main concern about Biden, his cognitive health?
Oh, yes, definitely. That we've watched getting more confusing as the months have recently gone past. But yes, clashing with Sadiq Khan is a bit of a worry.
What do you think, Sajeela? Is the special relationship safe in Labour's hands? You've got the prominent mayor of London calling Donald Trump a racist, a homophobe and a sexist.
Well, you know, it's arguably, he could be all three, but he's more of a sexist than anything, I think. In terms of having a special relationship, I think it's going to be the relationship, whoever's in. We've got, like, rock and a hard place, like, who do we choose? But America's in the same predicament. I'm no fan of, you know, Biden with Afghanistan, you mentioned. You know, he hasn't acted strongly enough with Israel, like no sanctions, nothing. He's cognitive, obviously, that's an issue, you know, his health. I mean, really, we should have a cut-off. I'm not an ageist, and I think everyone should be working. However long, I intend to work well into my pension years. But I just think, you know, when you cannot do the job at hand, you've got, especially when you're running a country, that's got to stop. I don't think the relationship's flawed. It doesn't matter if Labour's in or the Conservatives. I don't think it makes any difference. That relationship's always going to be there. It's just the better of the two evils on both sides of the shores.
To be fair to Labour, Neil Wallace, David Lammy, their leading frontbencher, has engaged with top US Republicans, and he's been quite dismissive of Mayor Khan's comments about Trump. Is that enough?
No, because who is David Lammy? What is the credibility of David Lammy? Non-existent. He may now be the shadow foreign secretary, but less than a couple of years ago, he was accusing Scotland Yard of faking the death figures at Grenfell. You know, he was a complete crazy hothead under the previous Labour leadership. Now he's in with a chance of a top job. He'll say anything you like. But the truth is, Sadiq Khan has got a long history of dislike of Trump. He's constantly tried to goad Trump. He's playing to his own very local audience here in London. The truth is, Sadiq Khan is three things as well. He's a failure, he's a crime perpetrator, and he's a liar. One thing you can guarantee about Khan, if he speaks, he's lying.
First of all, I mean, you can't call him a failure. This guy is celebrating yet another win to become London mayor, another term, another 4 years. And in what sense is he a liar?
Well, he's constantly lying in the London Assembly about police numbers, about crime numbers. Can I call him...
Lying or being a sort of smooth politician and, you know, altering the facts to his own agenda? Because lying is a very strong word.
Yeah, I think what you've just described is lying. And when you say a failure, ask all the parents of all the young kids who've died from knife crime during his time running London.
OK.
Just ask them.
Do you think that Mayor Khan is a liar and indeed a failure?
I don't, he definitely isn't a failure. I'd need evidence to show that where his lies come up before I accuse him of anything like that.
Housing history.
Huh?
Look at his history. Look at his
claims. But that's not enough. I mean, it's got to be substantiated with facts.
Yes, but his history, his claims about how many houses he's built in London are completely ripped apart by successive think tanks and academic groups. Simply not true.
OK, and here's the crux of the matter, though, Diana. A likely Donald Trump victory in November, as you suggested, he's ahead in the polls. Is that an argument that the Tories can leverage for Rishi Sunak to say, vote Conservative at the next election, and we will have a partnership between Trump and Sunak, a Western alliance akin to that of Thatcher and Reagan?
We wish that it could be a Thatcher
Is that an opportunity for Sunak to sell that vision of a partnership with America under the Conservatives?
I'm not sure about that. The whole thing, to me, is such a a confusing. Everybody's changing. They're telling lies. They're changing the stories. I'm not sure. I'm not convinced.
I mean, Neil, if I was in Number 10 advising the PM, I would certainly sell this idea of a partnership with Trump. You know, vote Tory, get Trump, dream team.
I think that it's...
You can see the front page already. Can't you see the front page?
Of course, absolutely. But the problem is just how discredited our political leaders are around the world. Does anybody want to be that involved in Trump? In fact, you were quite right in your piece here. You know, look at his success with the economy. And remember what, who was it? I can't remember which one of them was. It said, it's about the economy, stupid.
Yeah.
And it's that he will get a grip on again. And the whole issue about Sleepy Joe and his lack of cognitive ability is a serious issue.
Briefly, Sajila, is it time, whoever gets in, is it time to love bomb Donald Trump, given that he'll likely be the leader of the free world by the end of the year?
I don't think so, not in my opinion anyway.
But what's the point in picking
this man's
a fight?
a criminal.
What's the point in picking a fight with somebody that's going to be very influential, leading a country that's the #1 investor in the UK?
You know, the thing is, it's like Labour. Like, we don't know where Labour's going to stand, but I think once they get in, they'll sort their stuff out. Maybe Trump might be different this time around. Who knows?
Can you follow?
Hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, good luck with that.
How can you follow somebody who you really don't trust? His record is so awful in so many aspects of life. OK,
well, listen, folks, let me tell you that the London Mayor Sadiq Khan is not here to defend himself against those allegations of being a liar or perpetuating a crime. But this show is all about opinions and a diversity of such. So let me know your thoughts on this. Is it time for Britain to love bomb Donald Trump? And do you think Rishi Sunak should sell the idea that if you vote Conservative in October or November, then Trump and Sunak will be a dream team for the West? That is gbnews.com/your say. But next up in the big story, after another bruising week for the BBC, and as an almighty row breaks out over the corporation's plan to put adverts on their podcasts, is it time to scrap the licence fee altogether? We'll debate that next.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
More than 21,000 asylum seekers have gone missing in Britain over the past 5 years. The real number, by the way, will be much, much higher. The fact is, they've legged it. They're on the run and they're out committing goodness only knows what kind of crimes. But that's not the official line. Do you want to know what the official line is?
So do we now know what's happened to the remainders who have no legal basis on which to still be in the United Kingdom?
The Home Office, through our different mechanisms of tracing people, are continuing to seek to trace them.
So when people do disengage, and I think that's a more accurate word than gone missing, when people do disengage from us, we respond to that.
They've not disengaged, Mr. Cleverly. The vast majority of them had their claims rejected and then ran off because we're not deporting them quickly and they're not going to just sit there and wait for you to come and get them in a few years' time. If they don't turn up for an interview twice, they change their phone number, they don't fill in a questionnaire twice, they move address, or they change their lawyer without informing the Home Office. That's it. Is it any wonder, though, when you've got these civil service chuckle brothers running the show behind the scenes?
Put foreign offenders aside and Albanians aside, just forget about those numbers. How many people travelling on small boats that's been refused asylum have been sent to a third country or back to their own country over the past 3 years?
I don't think we have. I
think we'll write to the committee with those numbers, Mr. Anderson.
That's staggering. That's actually
staggering.
OK, then let's do it for the last year.
I don't have a number for non-Albanian, non-FNOs.
Perhaps they might be able to help you.
Let's do last week then.
Do we have any figures about anything?
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Now, let me tell you that my response to what's the big news this week, of course, Meghan in London has criticised Donald Trump, calling him a racist. Is the special relationship with America safe in Labour's hands should they achieve power? Well, feelings are coming in thick and fast. This from Jim. Mark, I will not call you an idiot for your remarks, but Trump is all that stands between us and oblivion. The current Marxist government under Obama is intent on the total destruction of the USA. I think Jim implying there that somehow Obama has a significant influence on the White House. And Donald Trump would eat Sadiq Khan for breakfast, just like Hannibal Lecter, says David. Keep that feedback coming at gbnews.com/your say. But it's time now for the big story and another bumpy week for our national state broadcaster. As the BBC's biggest star, Gary Lineker, faced criticism for describing the October the 7th attacks as the Hamas thing, not least criticised on this very programme, whilst the Foreign Secretary David Cameron again berated the corporation for not calling Hamas terrorists. Meanwhile, the BBC's plans to put adverts on their podcasts has been met with fury by some of the biggest media companies in the country, who argue that this move will impact the business model of commercial operators. Now, this is an interesting story. Companies like Global, who own LBC, Classic FM, Capital and Heart, argue that the BBC already enjoys a huge advantage, given that their services are funded to the tune of £3.8 billion a year in licence fee income. These radio stations have said that this move is outrageous and will distort the market. So is it time to call the bluff of the BBC and encourage more adverts and scrap the licence fee altogether? Let's put that to former BBC News producer turned director of Newswatch, David Keithley. David, thank you so much for joining us. Is it fair for the BBC to have adverts on their podcasts?
No, I don't think it is at all. And the background to this is that the UK podcast market is one of the vibrant success stories of the last 10 years in the media. It's grown, it's tripled in size over the last 8 years, and it's now worth 80 million. Now, what the BBC is now planning to do, and sorry, I should say that in that in that growth is lots of small companies, lots of medium-sized companies, some of the big players too, of course. But it is a classic example of the market driving or meeting demand. Now, what the BBC are now trying to do is they've already got podcasts on their output in BBC Sounds and in segments like BBC Ideas. But what they're saying is that if the BBC podcasts are used by streaming platforms such as Spotify, which obviously are YouTube, the big players, then they're going to put adverts on there. And that is leveraging the power of the BBC, the disproportionate power of the BBC in the market, to gain advantage in the commercial environment. BBC Studios, which is behind this, not a lot of people are aware, is the commercial arm of the BBC. It is growing massively currently because it's leveraging the overseas market and the overseas output of the BBC. But this is the invasion into the UK market of BBC Studios. BBC Studios is now turning over 2.1 billion a year. So it's one of the biggest players in the UK market. And what effectively it is doing is saying, now we're going to put our tanks on the lawn of this nascent podcast market, and we are going to become one of the big players in it.
Well, it strikes me as very unfair on the commercial players. Now, David, the BBC lost over 400,000 licence fee payers in 2022 alone, with people consuming their content on the internet instead and ignoring BBC output altogether. Do you think the licence fee is now dying a slow death anyway?
I do, and for separate reasons from what's going on in the podcast market, although the intertwined. The reason is that the BBC aren't focusing on what the BBC or the British public wants. It is sectarian content now. It is highly biased content now, aimed at only a certain segments of the audience. They've decided where their views are on so many fronts in their output, and they're not responsive to change. They won't change the complaint system. They won't allow different opinions about what their output should be, and they're not anymore big innovators in their output.
David, is it fair to call the BBC biased? I mean, they get complaints from Conservative supporters and Labour supporters. Isn't that proof they're doing something right? I mean, the BBC is arguably the most trusted news gatherer on the planet.
In recent surveys, only around 44% of the market believe the BBC is not biased. Yes, they do get complaints from all sides, but the point is that the research that has been done that is properly based shows that the bias is primarily one way, which is against the broad right in our society.
How bad do Hamas have to get before the BBC will call them terrorists, David?
That's a very good question. I don't know. They are a terrorist organisation officially in the UK. The BBC have got weasel words around it. Gary Lineker, you showed that clip of him calling them, just almost glossing over what they'd done. And I think the BBC need to take a very long, hard look at how they are treating the Israel-Gaza conflict.
Well, indeed. I mean, we talked about it on last night's show. The former director of television at the BBC, Danny Cohen, has called the corporation institutionally anti-Semitic. Now, of course, the BBC would deny that and argue that they work very hard to make sure that their output is balanced. They would cite the fact that they have many millions of happy viewers and listeners. David, stay with us. Let's bring my pundits into this. We have Sajila Kershi, Diana Moran and Neil Wallace. Neil, David there suggesting that the licence fee is pretty much dying a slow death anyway. The corporation needs around £3 or £4 billion to deliver the services it currently does. What's the best way to pay for that, do you think?
I think it's got a lot of problems, because I think David is right that it's sort of dying from the death of 1,000 cuts. And the problem is that the whole view of the licence fee is splitting in so many different ways because of the apparent bias in so many areas of the BBC from the Main Street norm. And so what you have here is a constant receding of support for the licensing. Personally, I still believe that BBC News is a force for good and that it provides a great service and needs to continue. However, it won't continue like that when it continues, for instance, covering Gaza the way it does. For instance, the way it covers so many ordinary news stories in the woke way that it does. It needs to get its act together. On reflection, I suspect David is right that the licence fee is struggling to draw breath now.
Is the BBC, Diana Moran, is the BBC doing a good job? Is it worth almost £170 a year? And is the licence fee the right way to fund it?
Well, the problem is with the BBC now, of course, I was BBC, so I should be pro-BBC, is that they do appear to be biased. They do appear to be woke. And therefore, many people are turning over, maybe to GBNews, for example, to get a more reasonable view of the news. And I do think that it's unfair that if the BBC are going into advertising, well, then surely all of us who pay our licence fee should be getting very cross about that.
OK.
And perhaps they've got to look within themselves at some of their top presenters, and a certain man beginning with L comes to my mind, and they should regulate that a lot more.
OK, but Sajila, the clock's against us. Your thoughts on this?
Well, I kind of agree with Neil that I do think the BBC News is a force for good. I do think they're reliable. We've talked about bias a lot on your show as well in the past. You know, every institution has a bias. You know, hello, we're in GB News. It has a right-wing bias. I understand what you're saying as well, that, you know, it should have a more... But if it has a bias, it has a bias, but I still rely on the news from that. However, the licensing fee, I just think is so dated. It makes me so angry. I got one letter through to say that your licence fee needs renewing, and then immediately got another one, a red letter, saying that you're going to be under investigation unless you pay. And that is not making me want to pay. I will when they really throw me a lot, but I'm not going to pay.
Absolutely. David, I've only got a few seconds. Closing thoughts.
Sorry.
Well, I think absolutely this underlines that the days of the licence fee are numbered. I do wish the BBC would become more self-reflective and really look at their own bias properly, which they have refused to do time and time again. They don't accept that they are biased, and there are many ways that my organisation has shown over the years that there are.
David, thank you so much for joining us. David Keeley is the director of Newswatch and a former top BBC News presenter himself. Don't forget, at 10 o'clock, it is My Take at 10. It's Harry and Meghan. It is their 6-year anniversary this weekend. Was it a marriage made in heaven or hell? Well, I'll be giving my verdict at 10 o'clock. But next up, UKIP have elected a new leader, and in a Mark Dolan Tonight exclusive, we'll be joined by the winner. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Into Sunday, we'll see showers easing, but it's going to be a murky start before plenty of warm sunshine. So higher pressure situated out towards the west, low pressure further towards the east, and in between, not too much going on, a lot of light winds around. So the showers that we've seen today across Wales and parts of the southwest will generally fade, especially across Scotland as well. But elsewhere, plenty of dry weather, clear spells, but we will see low cloud returning for parts of Scotland and the southeast of England. But otherwise, temperatures holding up at around 10 or 11 degrees in the towns and cities. So to start on Sunday, it's going to be a murky start for some of us with low cloud, mist and fog, especially for parts of the southeast of England and East Anglia. Further towards the west, though, plenty of bright skies to start the day, and that transferring across parts of Wales and the north of England. But across Scotland, especially further east you go, a lot of cloud to start the day, with low cloud lingering across those coastal regions. And further towards the north, cloud thick enough for some patchy rain and drizzle. So throughout the rest of Sunday, any low cloud, mist and fog should generally lift and break away to leave plenty of sunshine on offer for most of us. It will stay rather cloudy across parts of Scotland, and here we could see a few showers, and especially across that northeastern coast, once again feeling cool here with low cloud. But in the sunshine, temperatures recovering nicely up to 24, possibly 25 degrees. Monday's a similar picture to start with. We'll see plenty of low cloud, mist and fog around, but once again that should break away, leaving plenty of sunshine, a dry day on offer for most of us. We'll see some showers developing, but as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday, turning more unsettled with showers or perhaps even some longer spells of rain.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, UKIP, the party that sowed the seeds for what would ultimately become Brexit, has elected its first woman leader in the form of broadcaster and campaigner Lois Perry. The party's 8th leader since Nigel Farage won by more than 3/4 of the vote, as she replaces the formidable Neil Hamilton. And in a Mark Dolan Tonight exclusive, Lois Perry joins me now. Lois, congratulations on your excellent win.
Well, thank you.
You're now the leader of a national party, which means you've got to give up your Saturday nights to talk politics.
No, well, I can think of nothing that I'd rather do more. So thank you for having me. And you had me when I was a leadership contender.
Yep.
And here I am. And I am so excited. I really, really am. We're going to make UKIP new KIP, and we're going to make Britain great again, and we're going to mop up all of those disaffected red wall voters. They don't want to go to Labour, Mark. They don't want necessarily to go to the other party, which is the insurgent party of protest.
Right. Reform UK, perhaps?
Possibly, because maybe they... Look, I'm going to be very careful with my words here. If Nigel Farage, my friend, was leader, yeah, I wouldn't be sitting here. I wouldn't be sitting here. If he was the leader of Reform UK, there'd be no need for me and for what I'm doing. But there really, really is, because a relatable leader, someone that can connect with disaffected Tories and disaffected Labour voters, is very, very, very much needed.
So you feel that the current lack of dynamic leadership at the top of Reform UK is therefore creating a sort of gap in the market that you're seeking to fill?
Absolutely. And I mean, I've spoken to young people who've told me that they don't want to vote Tory, they don't want to vote Labour. They really wanted to vote Reform. They really, really did. But the hope not hate stuff, capitulating to communist bullies, they weren't very impressed with that.
So
they want to come home to UK.
You're impressed with Nigel Farage, and he's a friend of yours, but I would sort of read between the lines and suggest you're sceptical about Richard Tice. His approach as leader, or actually his policies?
OK, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background, OK? So basically, I was brought up by my maternal grandparents. My father left my sister and I, and my mum needed some support, yeah? My granddad owned an electronics factory, yeah? He employed over 100 staff. My dad's mum worked on a production line in an electronics factory, putting plugs together, OK? I understand what it's like firsthand to be entrepreneurial, the pitfalls, the slings and arrows of having your own business, but also how bloody hard it is to be working class. I have experience of both. I've been the lady of the house in a fully staffed mansion, and I've lived in social housing. I've had dinner with kings and princes and politicians, but I've also only had a tenner to put petrol in the car.
Sounds like an exhausting day.
It is an exhausting day, but I'm not saying that you
what's this got to do with Richard Tice?
I'm just saying you do not have to be the living embodiment of the Rudyard Kipling poem, you know, to actually be a good leader. But it does help if you have experience of real life on both sides, and people relate to it. Not always. Boris Johnson, Winston Churchill are notable exceptions, but I just feel that people want to come home to UKIP. I know they do, because I talk to people all the time.
So what is UKIP for? Essentially, it sowed the seeds for Brexit, and we're now out.
Absolutely.
So hasn't its main function disappeared?
Well, no, absolutely not, because we need independence from various things. We need to be energy independent. We need to be self-sufficient with our food. We need to be independent and be able to have our values. I always say that UKIP now, has always been, but especially now, is about values. So whereas in the past there's been some stuff that we've put behind us, this is a fresh start. OK?
What do you want to put behind you?
I think that there was some times in the past where you had people that were on the extreme right that infiltrated the party. They were got rid of, and we've had brilliant leadership. He steadied the ship in the last few years. But
so you want to get rid of the sort of the racists and the swivel-eyed loons?
Well, the thing is,
the nut jobs.
The thing is, those far-right people are already saying, oh, they've got a woke leader in, she's politically correct, she's this, because I said there's no place for racism or anti-Semitism in any party.
You're getting rid of the numpties, the window lickers.
There's no window lickers in UKIP, I can assure you. But it's about values. It really, really is. So values. So that's democracy, freedom of speech. It's about king and country. It's about being personally autonomous, personally responsible. It's about all of those things. If you share our values, it doesn't matter what religion you are or background. You are welcome in UKIP, and we will fight for you.
I hear you. If you've got UKIP versus Reform and some of the other smaller parties, isn't the right consuming itself? I mean, wouldn't the best thing for you to do to go and have a boozy lunch with Richard Tice?
Richard Tice
sort out your differences.
He's not interested in collaborating. Well, I mean, look at Meloni. She basically
Italian Prime Minister.
Absolutely, she was doing.
She's like an Italian Lois Perry, if anyone's watching.
Well, quite, yeah. I'm a little bit thinner. Anyway, but you know, she was doing okay, but not that great. And then she thought, right, we need to collaborate. We need to work with the other parties.
Yeah.
We are open to working with other parties on. Even Labour or the Tories or Reform, or when they share our values, and we will not put candidates up against people that share our values. That'd be totally counterproductive to do that. Yeah. So, but not everyone wants to collaborate or work together.
And can we go rapid fire now, just a few seconds?
Go on.
You want to be the enemy of uncontrolled mass immigration.
Yes.
We certainly need to stop the boats. I think most people think that.
Yeah.
What's an appropriate number for legal net migration annually?
Well, I think that the boat's a little bit smoke and mirrors, actually, to be honest. I think that we need to look at the no-go areas and the imported conflicts that we've brought in that are already in the United Kingdom.
All right.
And we'd use specialist task forces, police task forces.
OK, so you would stop the boats, but what about legal net migration? I mean, you're already a politician, not answering the question. I tell you. What's a good figure?
I think that we should have a cap, but we're in the process of actually working out our policies on everything. I've been in the post 3 days.
So you're working on a figure that will be negotiated.
Absolutely.
A couple of other quick ones. You will be the enemy of the woke mind virus.
Yes, we will. So that's the whole gender nonsense. That's all of the playing.
Is that anti-trans?
No, not at all. Not for adults, but they shouldn't be allowed into women's spaces. Absolutely,
okay. Women's sport.
Absolutely, but with children, leave those kids alone.
Okay, and last thing, is UKIP Islamophobic?
No, not at all. Muslims, anyone who shares our values of democracy, free speech, king and country, patriotism, the rule of law, are welcome in the party. But radical Islamism or radical forms of any religion, actually, no. No, no, no.
Lois Perry, thank you for coming and seeing us.
Congratulations
on the job, which I'm sure you'll do in a very energetic and entertaining way.
Thank you very much.
And have a great election. I do hope you'll be a key contributor to Mark Dolan tonight in the months ahead.
I'd love that.
Brilliant stuff. Of course, I want to hear from all of the main parties in the run-up to the election. Labour, Tories, Lib Dem, Green, you name it. Don't forget, at 10 o'clock, Harry and Meghan, their 6th wedding anniversary, My Verdict. But next up, my Mark Meets guest is the author of a shocking book about the rise of Adolf Hitler. That's next.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Emma, let's start, shall we, with Prince William confirming on the Isles of Scilly yesterday that Kate is doing well. I thought it was a very brave lady to say, "We're allowed to ask how the Princess of Wales is," and I thought, well, we're not, so good for you.
Yeah. One of the hospitals he visited on the Isles of Scilly, an administrator, a hospital administrator, asked him how Kate was doing, and he said, "She's doing well, thanks."
Until we hear official word from the palace, then we're just going to have to rely on little snippets like this.
It does seem to be serious. So,
it does.
Again, we wish her
What's
very
quite
best.
telling as well, I went through some of the social media comments on this, and people that live on the Isle of Scilly were just saying how close they got, how wonderful it was. He's supporting local businesses, and that pasty shop will now be like treasured, you know, forever. That people forever go there.
On the Quay. It sounds great. It's called On the Quay.
Compare and contrast with this "I feel at home in Nigeria" vibe that Meghan's putting out. Two very, very different takes on how to be a royal.
Do they want to be royals or do they not? Because they seem to want sort of half the trappings but without all the kind of responsibilities.
These two brothers, who obviously went through a lot growing up, obviously can't stand the sight of each other right now, and it's just really sad.
Well, it goes beyond the brothers. I mean, we are told from some of the papers this morning that the King didn't have time in his schedule to see his son because he was actually meeting David Beckham for a private meeting.
Well, who would you choose?
All about priorities.
I mean, I know who I
It's all about priorities.
But, you know, you surely, I mean, you could just pop in as well. I reckon that Harry and Bex are pals, probably. So what's gone on there, and will they ever be able to repair things?
And they really were so close. I mean, when you compare the Buckingham Palace garden party, a couple of miles down the road, literally Harry was at Westminster or wherever it was. It wasn't far. And it absolutely would have been possible for him to go.
3 miles apart, and yet absolutely worlds apart in terms of their emotional state.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQs Live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Harry and Meghan celebrate 6 years of marriage. My verdict in my take at 10. First, this. It's time for Mark Meets, and tonight the author of a compelling book about the rise of Adolf Hitler. Award-winning historian Thomas Weber has written Becoming Hitler, The Making of a Nazi. It's out now. Thomas Weber, thank you so much for joining us. The book examines Hitler's time in Munich between 1918 and 1926, long before the war. Why was this period so formative?
Thank you so much for having me. I think it was so formative because this was really a time in which Hitler thought and German thought that the world was at crisis, that they really needed to figure out how Germany could be made great again. And at that moment in time, Hitler was really trying to figure out how the world functions. And so it was really in the aftermath of the First World War that he asked himself, why is it that Germany lost the war, and how do we need to remake Germany in order so that Germany can survive in a new world of superpowers?
And was he right-wing or was he left-wing? Was he a socialist, a conservative? Do we know about his politics?
When Hitler came home from the war, he was really kind of adrift. He was really trying to find a new political home. Initially, during the revolution, he cooperated with left-wing groups. He served the Munich Soviet Republic, which was a radical left-wing group. But then after this was put to an end, he became an informer and switched sides. And it was really in the summer of 1919 that he had his political awakening, when he realized with the punitive Versailles Treaty that Germany really had lost the war. And it is really then when he was searching for answers, and it is then that he kind of switched from being open to left-wing ideas to being more open to more radical right-wing ideas. Not so much traditional conservative ideas, but a kind of right-wing collectivism.
And do we know much about his personality and makeup at this time? Was he an angry person? Was he ranting and raving? Or was he more thoughtful in this period?
I think a little bit of both. I mean, I think we should, in a way, I think it's a fallacy that we have got this image of Hitler constantly raging. It's very convenient to think of Hitler as always the kind of person who we see in some Hitler documentary, but that's the Hitler from the kind of last 5 or 10 seconds of a 2-hour speech, where after 2 hours, it kind of is a crescendo. He's really getting shouting and spitting. But that's not how, even later in his life, how he spoke behind the scenes, where he was generally described as quite thoughtful and as quite winning. But after the First World War, Hitler was really kind of, initially he wasn't really functioning socially. He was kind of a loner. And then in a kind of very weird way, he suddenly finds an audience and suddenly everyone sees in him a future leader, while during the war, even his commanding officers didn't see any leadership qualities in him.
Did he start out with good intentions, or was there always poison at the heart of his project?
There certainly was always poison at the heart of his project. I mean, but I still think we should kind of try to understand Hitler in a way. We have got to really get into his head, and rather than to think of him as just somehow just being a raging lunatic who is just full of hatred, we've got to understand why he's doing what he is doing. And this goes back to what I said a minute ago. He's really trying to understand the underlying reasons for Germany's weakness after World War I, and then he kind of identifies the supposedly pernicious influence of Jews as being weakening Germany, and insufficient territory and manpower as making sure that Germany cannot survive in this world of superpowers. So his intention was to make his country structurally strong again. So you could say in that sense, there is an element of good intention, but of course it was immediately then directed against Jews and others in a kind of proto-genocidal way. And that was, of course, anything but good.
How and why did he become this monster? Did he have a personality disorder? Did something happen to him earlier in life that caused him to have no empathy? I mean, this was murder on an industrial scale eventually.
It's an excellent question, but it's in a way we still don't know the answer. I mean, we know that he always had difficulties having normal social interactions. He always had difficulty speaking on the same level. He could function really only in hierarchies, either looking up to people and following orders or giving orders. So in a way, there is something very strange about his personality. And there's also this kind of weird episode of a missing year before World War I, where we don't really know what happened during that time. And he didn't even want to talk to his closest associates to what happened there. So it seems that something traumatic happened there. Whether or not that helps us to understand the man he became is difficult to tell if we can only speculate what happened during that year.
Thomas Weber, a privilege to have you on the programme. My thanks to award-winning historian Thomas Weber, whose book about Hitler is called Hitler, The Making of a Nazi. Compelling reading. It's out now. Fascinating stuff. Next up, my take at 10. Harry and Meghan, 6 years on. The verdict.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Into Sunday, we'll see showers easing, but it's going to be a murky start before plenty of warm sunshine. So higher pressure situated out towards the west, low pressure further towards the east, and in between, not too much going on, a lot of light winds around. So the showers that we've seen today across Wales and parts of the southwest will generally fade, especially across Scotland as well. But elsewhere, plenty of dry weather, clear spells, but we will see low cloud returning for parts of Scotland and the southeast of England. But otherwise, temperatures holding up at around 10 or 11 degrees in the towns and cities. So to start on Sunday, it's going to be a murky start for some of us with low cloud, mist and fog, especially for parts of the southeast of England and East Anglia. Further towards the west, though, plenty of bright skies to start the day, and that transferring across parts of Wales and the north of England. But across Scotland, especially further east you go, a lot of cloud to start the day, with low cloud lingering across those coastal regions. And further towards the north, cloud thick enough for some patchy rain and drizzle. So throughout the rest of Sunday, any low cloud, mist and fog should generally lift and break away to leave plenty of sunshine on offer for most of us. It will stay rather cloudy across parts of Scotland, and here we could see a few showers, and especially across that northeastern coast, once again feeling cool here with low cloud. But in the sunshine, temperatures recovering nicely up to 24, possibly 25 degrees. Monday's a similar picture to start with. We'll see plenty of low cloud cloud, mist and fog around, but once again that should break away, leaving plenty of sunshine. A dry day on offer for most of us. We'll see some showers developing, but as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday, turning more unsettled with showers or perhaps even some longer spells of rain.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking? Not a line, I never won a penny in my life.
I don't know what to say.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life. Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, it shocks me. This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online. In the United Kingdom and across the world, this is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my Take at 10, Harry and Meghan celebrate their 6th anniversary this weekend. Was it a marriage made in heaven or hell? I'll be giving my verdict on 6 years of the Sussexes. Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from our top pundits. And Kinsey Scofield, the Queen of US Royal, reporting live from the United States. A packed show, lots to get through. Harry and Meghan, the verdict. After the headlines with GB News royalty, Sophia Wensler.
Mark, thank you. From the GB newsroom at 10 o'clock. Your top story this hour. The Israeli military says it's recovered another body today after the bodies of 3 Israeli hostages were recovered from Gaza on Friday. It comes as a member of Israel's 3-man war cabinet, Benny Gantz, has threatened to resign from the government if it does not adopt a new plan for the war in Gaza. Israel says it believes 100 hostages are still alive there. Families of hostages have been holding a news conference in Tel Aviv, calling for their return.
The war must be stopped at once,
and the hostages must be rescued. War cabinet members, stop the expansion of the Rafah operation and secure a hostage release deal now.
Our family members are being raped in captivity. They are being starved and tortured. Why do you allow Netanyahu to continue sabotaging the hostage release deal negotiations? Why do you remain silent in the face of his actions? Why do you not come out and tell the public, as Gallant has done, how Netanyahu tirelessly takes action to sabotage the hostage release deal?
In other news, thousands of people can now safely drink their tap water again following a parasite outbreak. South West Water has today reduced the boil water notice in the Brixham area following all clear test results. The number of confirmed cases of cryptosporidium in the Brixham area are 46, but the water company has confirmed it is now safe for around 14,500 households in the Alston supply area to use their tap water as normal. But they're still advising around 2,500 properties in Hillhead, upper parts of Brixham and Kingswear to continue to boil their drinking water before consuming it. Meanwhile, Olympian dame Kelly Holmes has joined protesters today demonstrating about poor water quality. 37 protests took place today, including in Brighton, Falmouth and Edinburgh. Water companies say they're spending more than £14 billion this year to protect waterways in England and Wales, but campaigners are demanding tougher action. And Tyson Fury says boxing fans should expect fireworks when he takes on Alexander Usyk in just under an hour, as they finally go head-to-head to become the undisputed world heavyweight boxing champion. Alexander Usyk has had to have his weight corrected after it emerged that the wrong weight was read out at last night's weigh-in. The Ukrainian world champion will enter the ring for tonight's fight in Riyadh at 15 stone 13 pounds, considerably lighter than Fury's 18 stone 10 pounds. Around 3,000 British fight fans have travelled to Saudi Arabia for tonight's clash. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Mark.
Thanks, Sophia. Welcome to a busy Mark Dolan tonight. Tomorrow's Sunday papers are coming with full pundit reaction. Plus, find out why King Charles is reportedly angrier than he's ever been in the company of the Queen of US royal reporting, Kinsey Scofield. But we start with my take at 10. Happy anniversary, Harry and Meghan. What a journey it's been for the Sussexes since tying the knot 6 years ago this weekend. Their wedding on Saturday, the 19th of May 2018, was the event and party of the year, with thousands of adoring fans lining the streets to wave flags, wish the couple well, and hopefully to grab a glimpse of Harry in his uniform and to see Meghan's radiant smile. The wedding was one of the most watched television events of the year too, with millions glued to the action here at home and billions watching globally. Now, the Sussexes would have you believe that somehow the press had it in for them, and in particular Meghan. Let me tell you, the opposite was the case. Friends of mine in Fleet Street have told me that at the time they saw Meghan as the new Diana. They salivated at the prospect of how many newspapers and magazines her radiant face would sell. She was considered, in fact, far more bankable than Catherine at the time. And the headlines about their nuptials were similarly glowing. The Mail said, "A magically modern royal wedding." "The look of love," said the Express. The Sun newspaper, "She's the one." How about this from the Times? "Welcome to the family," with a wonderful message to Meghan's beautiful and elegant mother, Doria. And the Sun on Sunday, "Kistery." Nicely done. So where did it all go wrong? Well, when you buy a car, you check the tyres and the engine oil. When you buy a company, you look at the balance sheet. And when you embark on marriage, you think carefully about the implications for the rest of your life, something that Meghan Markle, in my view, did not do. Now, she's an impressive person, and her story is one of unbridled ambition and ruthless social climbing. From a glamour girl on a TV game show to the television legal drama Suits, via a high-flying producer husband who ultimately bit the dust, like so many in her life, including her friends Lizzie Cundy, Piers Morgan and even her own father, Thomas. Meghan's story is one of ascendancy and the pursuit of fame, power and money. Which is why you have to wonder whether it wasn't only love and attraction that drew her to this millionaire prince, the son of the future king of the United Kingdom. Now, I'm impressed by Meghan Markle and what she's achieved in her life. Good luck to her. But it's my view that poor old Prince Harry was a sitting duck to her wider plans for global domination. I don't think she ever really intended to maintain a public royal role. It doesn't take long for the opening of hospital wings, listening to the bagpipes, watching soldiers on manoeuvres, eating cucumber sandwiches, and the endless smell of fresh paint to lose its lustre. It's my view that almost from day one, once she'd bagged her prince, the plan was to dump those royal duties, exit the monarchy, exit the royal family, and exit Britain. I have no proof of that other than it happened. After all, Harry reportedly told organisers in the run-up to the wedding, what Meghan wants, Meghan gets. Meghan Markle has her fans. I don't think it's been easy for her. The press have probably overcorrected and are now too harsh. And like I've said, she is an unstoppable force. But let's look at the facts. Since she arrived in Harry's life, he has fallen out with his father, his brother, his stepmother and his sister-in-law. And he's fallen out with his country. He was once more popular than Queen Elizabeth herself. He has lost titles, privileges, honours, gongs, plaudits, medals and duties. He might still be the Duke of Sussex, but now he's a commoner, reliant on spilling the beans about his family and his country in podcasts, on TV shows and in best-selling autobiographies. Harry's life and innermost secrets have been sold to the highest bidder. Just this week, Prince William and King Charles are reportedly raging with anger. Charles, the angriest anyone has ever seen him, about the Sussexes' trip to Nigeria, which insiders say deliberately looked like an official royal trip. Which is why it's my sad assessment that Meghan Markle is the worst thing possible that could have happened to Prince Harry. 6 years on, poor old Harry looks like an accessory to his missus, a useful tool. Less a marriage and more a hostage situation. Poor old Harry, California's answer to Terry Waite. I hope I'm wrong. Now, I sparked controversy last weekend and broke the internet by saying that Britain and the King should forgive Prince Harry and bring him back into the fold. Well, that wasn't everyone's cup of tea. But for that to happen, two things would need to occur. Harry would need to apologise, and Meghan, sadly, would need to be out of the picture. Now, I don't want this royal couple to split. I don't want to see any marriage end. They've got two beautiful kids who are the priority. But the sad truth is that whilst she remains in his life, I don't see a way back for the prodigal prince. They'll have peace in the Middle East before this mess is sorted out. It may be Harry and Meghan's 6-year anniversary, but it's far from a happy one. Your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. I'll get to your opinions in just a moment, but first, tonight's top pundits. Former executive editor of the News of the World, Fleet Street's finest Neil Wallace, comedian and broadcaster Sajila Kershi, and the Green Goddess herself, TV personality Diana Moran. Well, Sajila Kershi, 6 years on, Harry and Meghan, a marriage made in heaven or a marriage made in hell?
Well, it's a bit of heaven and hell, I think. And I kind of agreed with you that it was started really well. The public loved her. You know, they were like a little fairy tale. I kind of preferred their wedding to, to William, and although I did like William and Kate's as well. I think we kind of... I kind of agreed with you last week that I think the King should forgive him. and Meghan and make up. I mean, all families fall out. They're like any other family, but they're not like any other family because they are the king and queen, etc. I think things started going wrong, many things. They didn't put her as an actress on the website, and the royal website, so they erased a big part of her life, which she is a feminist, I'm a feminist, and that would really annoy me because, like, she's a person in her own right. Then there was all the problems with her family, which everybody seems to praise her father and sister, but the father was just bleating on, trying to get a bit of the action, and the sister that she never seemed that close to was, coming out with dirt. So there was that kind of scandal. And then it progressively got worse, and I think she was unhappy because she is her own woman. I like Kate, but Kate was kind of really, once after university they met, she was geared for that role, whereas she did have a life before this. I think just leave them alone. Just let them get on with their own lives. I think we're really overly obsessed with them in this country, especially her, and I find that uncomfortable.
Well, of course, Sheila, I would argue they are feeding the monster with the podcasts, the Netflix TV documentaries and the autobiographies. Neil Wallace, you've been writing about the royals for decades. I don't want the Sussexes to split, but I think it's a bitter truth that as long as Meghan remains in Harry's life, reconciliation with the king, with his brother and with the country is impossible.
I think that's probably true. I think this week was very illustrative, actually, when you saw the Sussexes in Africa, in Nigeria. There is what you saw as the core of the problem. Meghan wants to be the star. She came here and thought she would be the star, but she then quite quickly realised they were always going to be the support cast, her and Harry. And I think that was the big shocker for her. And then I think she set out to change it quite consciously. And I think that it's almost impossible to get back from there. Please give us our privacy, they plead, while they write yet another bestseller, another podcast, another smiling for the tour. I think in one of the days in Nigeria, she went through something like 5 different outfits, costing thousands of pounds. Who paid for all that? Well, one of the stories in the paper today, for instance, said that all the travel arrangements were effectively paid by a Nigerian airline that got lots of free publicity out of it. Now, you can't carry on like this. The truth of the matter is, I can't believe that Charles really wants to be alienated from his own son. I simply don't believe that. I think he would love for there to be a way back. I think that the Sussexes have made it impossible to come back, and I don't think that Meghan gives a monkeys about that. She just doesn't care. She's happy setting the agenda, making her own rules. And Harry just sits there and I'm sorry, he's not really bright enough to understand the mess he's got himself in.
OK, Diana Moran, are we being harsh on Meghan Markle? After all, Prince Harry is big enough, old enough and ugly enough to make his own decisions.
We're being harsh with both of them. Meghan in particular, because I think she thought she was going to be the princess, and having become the princess, she wanted everything on her terms.
Absolutely.
And she was not going to go through the royal approach that has been there for years and years. I think it's such a shame. I was a huge fan of Harry. I was there at the launch of the Invictus Games and I watched him with soldiers and people. He's got such a lovely manner about him. Meghan, I was thinking, was going to be wonderful, because she was of mixed race, and it was going to be very in keeping with our modern world. But she's a social climber, and she's absolutely damaged the royal family with the podcasts, with the book, well, Harry's book, of course, and then, of course, this trip to Nigeria as well, where she has absolutely revelled in it thought she was the princess again. As a mother of two sons, I know father and son relationships. I would love to see the king with Harry again, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, folks, your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. Plus, tomorrow's Sunday papers are on the way. And for more reaction to my take at 10, I should say, and reflections on the Sussexes' 6-year wedding anniversary, Kinsey Scofield live from the United States. Plus, why is King Charles reportedly angrier than he's ever been? Find out next.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Well, Welsh farmer Gareth Wyn-Jones is a first-language Welsh speaker and joins us now. Gareth, I mean, a lot of people will be thinking, hang on, this guy is a Welsh teacher. He speaks English. He knew what was on the parking ticket. He's just trying to make a point. He's being a prat, isn't he?
No, hey, come on, mate. I'm a first language Welsh. It's important that we watch after our language and, you know, that everything's bilingual. For us in Wales, you wouldn't go to France and expect your ticket to be in English, would you? You know, English is the most spoken language, but let's watch after these small languages. It's part of our cultural. So, you know what, I take my hat off to the guy. Fair play to him to go out and to fight this. But what it's done is put it onto the mainstream media, and you're talking about it, even that you're calling them that. You know, at least we're having a discussion about it, and it's putting the Welsh language in the forefront. And,
so,
you know,
Gareth,
speaking Welsh is important.
Yeah, so Gareth, this is a matter of principle. Is there a sense that the Welsh language is being eradicated in Wales? Is this something that the Welsh people need to rise up against?
Well, Welsh government are trying to, you know, bring a lot more Welsh speaking into our daily life and teach people how to speak Welsh. Well, everything should be bilingual then. And I think, you know, it should start with government. So government should be putting pressure on these companies to make sure everything is bilingual. So I get behind this guy. Fair play to him. It's a good stance, and it puts it in the public eye. Let's have everything in both languages, especially Welsh, because that's my first language. And I'm
you know what? If I was Welsh, if I were Welsh, I think I would agree with you. I think I would agree with you, Gareth.
It depends if you come from Wrexham.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Well, 6 years on from their wedding, was Meghan Markle the worst thing that could have happened to Prince Harry? That was the topic of my take at 10. The opinions are coming in thick and fast. gbnews.com/your say. Diana says, Mark, we don't want either Harry or Meghan coming back to the UK. Meghan thinks she's royalty and it seems is going to start arranging her own royal tours like Nigeria. If they do another so-called royal tour, hopefully the King will strip them of all titles. Adrian, who is a GB News member, says, I would love King Charles and Harry to be close again. It's not going to happen, so I'm finished with it. Concentrate on the royal family that we have here. Don't report on those two. We'll get to more of your opinions very shortly. But, folks, it is time now for more on this in the company of the Queen of American showbiz and royal reporting, Kinsey Scofield. Hey, Kinsey, great to see you. First of all, your reaction to my take at 10. Although I find Meghan Markle an impressive person. I think she's the worst thing that could have happened to Prince Harry. What's your view?
I mean, I think he would disagree with you because she gave him 2 beautiful babies. In the long run, I do believe he's going to regret the way that everything unfolded. But you have 2 beautiful boys. You know how much that those children mean to you and how they changed your life. And I imagine that while Prince Harry's life is increasingly more difficult, this is a man that's having to learn how to pay his own phone bill for the first time. I imagine that, you know, the idea of these 2 children have improved his life.
Well, I think that's a very fair point. As I mentioned in the Take at 10, the kids are the priority. But he may come to rue the day she ever stepped into his life. Time will tell, Kinsey. Can we talk about this Nigerian trip? I understand it's caused a storm in the palace.
I mean, well, where do we begin? Well, Mark, where do we even begin? There's a new article. This is from the Daily Beast, and it's titled Harry and Meghan Playing Rival Royals is Palace Nightmare. And they're exploring just the diplomatic issues associated with Harry and Meghan's rogue royal pursuits. One former courtier telling the publication overseas visits might look like jollies, but they are actually a matter of foreign policy. They are all about promoting the UK and building diplomatic and UK relations, trade alliances, and that's on behalf of the government itself. Harry and Meghan have different priorities. You and I know exactly what those priorities are. They're headlines and cash and freebies. You know, they got to keep all the gifts they received on this trip to Nigeria. Typical royals can't do those things. And another report, this is coming from Tom Quinn to the Mirror, saying that the king is absolutely furious over this, the angriest anyone has ever seen them. Although my sources are telling me the diplomatic argument is very valid, but the palace expects the government to step in to deal with that, to shut them down. And we kind of saw that with people coming out saying they are not representing the UK. But I don't believe that Prince William or the king are sitting around stewing about this trip because they know more about Harry and Meghan than we know. I mean, they have access to that palace bullying report. And it's my understanding that they think that the more the Sussexes put themselves out there, the more the world is going to see them for who they truly are. And it's, you know, a ticking time bomb. You're going to get more of these online, or you're going to get more of these allegations of bullying. Meghan's going to continue to show up late for appearances or dress inappropriately, and the world will see them for who they truly are.
Let's talk now about controversy around their Nigerian host. Tell me more.
Wow, this is another example of why the royal family is like, okay, guys, good luck. Prince Harry and Meghan were welcomed to Nigeria by a fugitive wanted in the United States over a $20 million money laundering scheme. You cannot make this up. According to the Daily Mail, Dr. Alan Inyima was among a small group of people who greeted H&M when they landed in Nigeria, and he's the founder and the CEO of Air Peace. It's a Nigerian carrier that the Sussexes actually used on their 3-day tour. Now, this individual is the subject of a U.S. federal indictment filed back in November 2019. He's charged with bank fraud and money laundering. He moved more than $20 million from Nigeria through the United States, some of his bank accounts in Atlanta. It involved the scheme false documents based on purchases of airplanes. CNN reports that he allegedly used the laundered money to buy Lexuses, Rolls Royces, Mercedes, designer goods, Louis Vuitton, Prada. He's apparently been deported from the U.S. twice. He denies those allegations, but it looks like Harry and Meghan are endorsing him by associating with him. And that is what the type of stuff the palace would have helped them avoid.
Yes, and I hear that Prince Andrew is very keen to meet this chap. Listen, let's talk about a musical icon. Don McLean, a great singer-songwriter, of course, famous for many hits, including American Pie. And he's pretty concerned by some of Prince Harry's comments in his book, Spare. What's the story?
Well, I mean, I think the general takeaway from this, he's defending Elvis, which I can get behind that. But I think the general takeaway is McLean saying that Prince Harry just doesn't get America. And he's probably right. all we've seen Prince Harry do since he's moved over here is try to change it, and those efforts have been unwelcome. But he was talking about Harry's criticism of Elvis and Graceland in the book Spare, and basically Don said Harry doesn't understand that Elvis is like a poor man's king, America's king. He came from nowhere. Obviously he's a very talented music artist, but he came from nothing and turned himself into something, and Americans really admire that. He called Prince Harry this hothouse orchid, a show horse who never did a thing. So Don is really challenging Prince Harry about his Elvis criticism.
Last but not least, Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck. Is there trouble in paradise?
I know that this keeps you up at night, Mark. I know. Ben Affleck, seen with no ring. He's been living separately from Jennifer Lopez for a few weeks now. He moved out of their $60 million Beverly Hills mansion that they bought last year, according to TMZ, and is in a rental home out of Brentwood. There are these new divorce rumors. Jennifer Lopez's $20 million money, like completely ego-driven Amazon movies, they blew up in her face, critically totally panned. And then she's having to cancel a lot of concert dates because she's not moving a lot of tickets. So it's a tough time for Jennifer Lopez, and I hope that they don't break up. I like this couple. I tolerate them.
Well, definitely. They're both very attractive. Let's hope they can make some babies and make the world a more beautiful place. Kinsey, you make Mark Dolan tonight a more beautiful place. We'll see you in a week's time. My thanks to Kinsey Scofield. Check out her brilliant podcast, To Die For Daily, and her website of the same name. Next up, tomorrow's Sunday Papers with full pundit reactions. See you in 2.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Into Sunday, we'll see showers easing, but it's going to be a murky start before plenty of warm sunshine. So higher pressure situated out towards the west, low pressure further towards the east, and in between, not too much going on, a lot of light winds around. So the showers that we've seen today across Wales and parts of the southwest will generally fade, especially across Scotland as well. But elsewhere, plenty of dry weather, clear spells, but we will see low cloud returning for parts of Scotland and the southeast of England. But otherwise, temperatures holding up at around 10 or 11 degrees in the towns and cities. So to start on Sunday, it's going to be a murky start for some of us with low cloud, mist and fog, especially for parts of the southeast of England and East Anglia. Further towards the west, though, plenty of bright skies to start the day, and that transferring across parts of Wales and the north of England. But across Scotland, especially further east you go, a lot of cloud to start the day, with low cloud lingering across those coastal regions. And further towards the north, cloud thick enough for some patchy rain and drizzle. So throughout the rest of Sunday, any low cloud, mist and fog should generally lift and break away to leave plenty of sunshine on offer for most of us. It will stay rather cloudy across parts of Scotland, and here we could see a few showers, and especially across that northeastern coast, once again feeling cool here with low cloud. But in the sunshine, temperatures recovering nicely up to 24, possibly 25 degrees. Monday's a similar picture to start with. We'll see plenty of low cloud, mist and fog around, but once again that should break away, leaving plenty of sunshine, a dry day on offer for most of us. We'll see some showers developing, but as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday, turning more unsettled with showers or perhaps even some longer spells of rain.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The
People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, Josh, it's 10:30. Let's do it. The Sunday papers, hot off the press courtesy of producer Ben, and we've got the Observer here. Archbishop of Canterbury urges Starmer to ditch the cruel two-child benefit cap. Jeremy Hunt, told to honour pledge on infected blood payments. The Mail on Sunday next. Cuts leave the UK with just one plane for Para's D-Day jump. And Harry and conman Nigerian king twice deported from the US. That's what happens when you organise your own quasi-royal trips. Sunday Mirror now. Tina Malone exclusive. My Paul took his own life. I'm heartbroken. TV star Tina Malone has revealed that her army veteran husband committed suicide. Very, very sad story there. The Sunday Express now. Companies told end this woke madness, a top cabinet minister. Tonight told woke bosses to stop lecturing people and get back to delivering great goods and services. Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch accused firms of wasting too much time on political gestures and activism, which can turn off potential customers. Telegraph now. Labour will tell NHS staff to work weekends. Wes Streeting vows to protect whistleblowers and cut a reliance on migrants in a new healthcare plan. Fever pitch. Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, celebrates Southampton reaching the Championship playoff final with his parents at St Mary's Stadium. Russia and China manipulating UK voters with social media war is the other story. And courts may scrap culturally insensitive barrister wigs. And the Daily Star Sunday, England's Euro hopes to be dashed by slimy croakers. 3 lions versus the frogs. England's Euro 24 bound players have been warned that rowdy German frogs could keep them awake this summer. The amphibians are causing a right ribbit next to the Aces luxurious hotel. It's enough to make Gareth Southgate hopping mad. There we are. Well, when we win the Euros, all the other nations will be green with envy. Now, I'm here all week. Try deliver. Let's have a look at all of these stories in the company of my top pundits this evening. Former executive editor of the News of the World, Fleet Street's finest, Neil Wallace. Comedian and broadcaster Sajila Kershi, who's put in a double shift tonight. Thank you, Sajila. Can't have too much of the Sajils. And model and TV personality Diana Moran, that's right, the green goddess herself. Radiant in yellow today. Lots of stories to get through. And how about this one, Sajila? The Archbishop of Canterbury urges the government, actually not just the government, but the incoming potentially new Prime Minister Keir Starmer to ditch the two-child benefit cap. Now, this is a new policy introduced by the Tories, which Labour are going to keep, in which you don't get any further benefits if you go beyond 2 children.
Well, it's becoming a bit China. We were just talking about China, weren't we?
Doesn't it?
Yeah, they can only have 2 children. At least they had one, but we can have one, a girl and a boy. Do you need any more? Do you need any more than 2? I don't know.
Well, I think one's too many these days, but yes.
Yeah, my grandmother had 14, but, you know, they didn't have TV then. We've got TV, we've got
the
Netflix.
internet.
There's no excuse to have more than 2 children these days. What do I think of that? I think only having the one child, I think that seems... It's amazing, isn't it? We all just relate everything to ourselves. But I think that's
isn't the
terribly
point?
unfair.
Isn't the idea that if you want to have 3 or 4 children,
you've got to afford
you've got to afford it,
Yeah.
and that you can't just decide, I'm going to have loads of children, and someone else will pick up the bill?
Yeah, that's where I do have a little bit of a problem, yeah.
Right. I mean, what do you think about this? But many would argue that it's heartless stopping at 2, because what you're going to have is child poverty, children going hungry, Diana.
The thing, you said it just then, if you're going to have children, then you should be able to afford to look after those children that you're going to have, not expect the state to be looking after them.
Of course, not all children are planned, are they?
Perhaps people should be a little more thoughtful. There's plenty of
ways,
contraception out there, ways. We're all taught about it.
Yeah, well, they
and as
are
my
indeed.
gym teacher used to say, the best protection of all is to say no, girls.
That's it. But you can't say no to Neil Wallace, who's with us tonight on the sofa. Neil, listen, this is the Archbishop of Canterbury, once again wading into politics. Is this beyond his pay grade?
This is my real take of this story. Yet again, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who is presiding over the collapse of the Church of England, spending his time wading into social issues when his church is falling apart behind them. I'm an active Christian. I attend church every week, and the distance between Welby and the ordinary person in the pews is simply massive. He's got a lot of issues to sort out in the Church of England. Him getting involved in this, the biggest issue about this is it could lead to a call for the Church of England to be disestablished. As in, why on earth are those guys there in the House of Lords being able to vote to have their say? They're there because that's the tradition of this country. But if he wades into big political issues like this, when he's got a heck of a lot on his own plate that he ought to be tackling, it becomes very hard to justify.
And, of course, this is a man who's been outspoken in his criticism of the Rwanda plan.
But he's a man who's outspoken, essentially, on anything to do that is right of centre. He makes virtually no pretence at being anything other than pro-Labour. And an awful lot of his the people who go to his churches don't think that. And he's alienating very successfully a huge part of the congregation of the Church of England. Welby, butt out.
I mean, Diana Moran, of course, Welby supporters would argue that this comes from a place of empathy. He is a Christian. He's obviously a cleric in a leadership role, and he's concerned about children going hungry, being destitute, child poverty, inequality. Many would argue that is a Christian issue.
Yes, and I can see exactly what you're saying there. And yes, those are Christian issues, and those are innocent children who would be going hungry and all the rest of it. But I do agree with you.
What do you think, Sajila, about senior clerics being political?
OK, so I think he'd be better put to use, as would all religious leaders, to actually educate families or people in, like, because people just have children willy-nilly and they just think, well, you know, that's fine, they just come because God's sort of sent them and you know, that was meant to be born. But just sort of consider, well, look, if you have one child, this is what's going to cost you along the way. If you have two, this is how it increases. How will you pay for this? How will this work out? What are your future plans to pay for these children? If you've got a wife who's working, will that bring in another? You know, so those conversations aren't happening. But the church and the religious kind of organisations could be having those conversations to educate people into the expense of children, which I don't think a lot of people really do consider, because they just have children because they want them. They're not accessories. You know, you've got to pay for them, you've got to educate them, you've got to put them to college, school, whatever, and you've got to feed them, most importantly.
Sunday Express, Sajila.
Really
companies told by Kemi Badenoch, who I think will be a future Prime Minister, end this woke madness. Cabinet Minister tears into bosses over diversity drive. She argues that sort of activism in corporations is a turn-off for many customers. What do you think about this? You've seen the Halifax with pronoun badges. You've got civil servants with the rainbow lanyard. Is there too much politics in the workplace? Yeah, because it's environmentally unfriendly. All those lanyards are plastic, all that stuff that's being used, you know. Personally, look, this is the problem. It's like supply and demand. So, yes, there are lots of things going on, you know, diversity and all of that. And a lot of it is for good, you know, it should be. But it's the public that are also demanding it. And that's why... So I don't think it's just a one-sided thing. But I do think it's unnecessary. We've gone too far. We can just say we can be inclusive without having to do every single thing for every... Like, ADHD is the latest big thing. You know, you've got to include everybody. So everybody thinks they've got... Most performers, as you know, we've all got ADHD to a certain degree. You need to.
So, well, apparently we're
You don't have to be mad to work here, but it helps.
Yes, it does. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I just think it's everything in moderation. I think that's it, everything in moderation.
Now, the list of the most popular baby names in the UK has been released. For boys, the number one for the second year running is Noah, whilst Olivia takes top spot for girls. Harry, very sadly, and I don't know why, has dropped out of the top 10 for the first time in 2 decades.
Strange, that.
There you go. And the name Meghan is being used less for baby girls. I can see a trend here. Charles has dropped out of the top 100 Poor old King Charles. Does it matter what names you give your children, Diana?
Oh, of course it matters. You have to think very hard before the child is christened. Either it's a family thing or... Yes, it really matters.
Were you named after somebody? Where did Diana come from?
The goddess.
Well,
no, I've no idea.
Quite right, too.
I've no idea.
Well, you went on to become the Green Goddess. Neil, any idea why you were called Neil, apart from the fact that it's a very fine name?
Apart from the fact it's a very fine name, what more do you need?
Yeah, is there a great-uncle Neil or anything like that? Neil Armstrong? No?
As far as I'm aware, I didn't have any great-uncle.
There you go.
But, not to my knowledge.
There you go. Sajila, there's a problem with entertainers giving their children ridiculous names.
Like mine.
Moon Unit, I think, was the name
Moon Unit, yeah.
of
Dweezil.
Frank Zappa's child. Dweezil, is that right? Peach, I think we've had Orange.
Peaches is OK. I thought that was quite
right.
cute.
Yeah. Apple, for the Coldplay singer, Chris Martin and
was it
Gwyneth
Granny
Paltrow.
or which apple, though? Do you know what I mean? There's so many apples you could have named her.
Cox's Orange Pippin.
Yeah, Pippin, yeah.
There you go. But these names, I mean, Noah, that's a decent name, isn't it, really? It's neutral. It won't get you bullied in the classroom.
No. Not at all.
Glad to hear it. Fantastic stuff. Well, listen, lots more to come, including more front pages. And let me tell you, we'll be joined by the former editor of The Mirror, Paul Connew. Why? Well, because MPs are resorting to extreme measures to get re-elected. Find out how and why next.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
So there are migrants who come here and they make a big contribution and they pay a lot of tax. And some types of migration from some countries, that's particularly the case.
On that, sorry, Neil,
others,
on that, you say migrants from the Middle East, North Africa and Turkey, aged 25 to 64, are almost twice as likely to be economically inactive as someone born in the UK. So essentially, we've invited people to come here. Presumably, we believe they're going to then work. And then they're twice as likely to be economically inactive. I mean, that's a recipe for economic disaster.
Yeah, so in the last census, we saw that the employment rate of people who are born in the UK is higher than the employment rate of people who've come here from another country. And that tells you that migration policy is not on track at all. And as I say...
Hang on, doesn't that just account for those dependents that are brought with them? So people from the Middle East and North Africa are much more likely to have, for example, a wife who stays at home and a husband who goes out to work. That largely would account for having half as much economic activity.
No, so I should have said, what I meant is even among those who are of working age, excluding the dependents and the children and so on, the employment rate is lower. Now, for some groups from some countries...
people stay at home to look after children, perhaps?
Yeah, so there's a lot of people who are economically inactive for that reason. There's a lot more higher rates of unemployment as well among some groups. And if you look, broadly speaking, the trend is that people who come here from rich countries, from either Western Europe or from countries like Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the US and so on, they tend to have very high employment rates and very high earnings as well, and you get clearly a benefit from that. But then if you have a lot of migration from lower skilled people, particularly from poor countries, who have an incentive to come here, even if they're ending up working in the minimum wage, because it's still a lot more than in a very poor country, then you'll tend to see people who have either quite low rates of employment for the reasons you're just describing, and also potentially quite low wages as well. So they're very unlikely to be net contributors to
And
the
Neil, let's not pretend that the immigration debate is all about economics.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new. The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people, to go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good for her.
Welcome back. We've got more front pages, and let's have a look at the Sunday Telegraph. And they lead with, "Tainted blood is the worst scandal of my lifetime. It is time for justice," vows Jeremy Hunt. The Chancellor has pledged to fulfil his promise to a dying victim of the contaminated blood scandal as the government prepares to unveil a compensation package for those caught in the worst treatment disaster in NHS history. Also, second-class post could be cut in half after Royal Mail buyout. OK, those are your front pages. Let's now speak to the former editor of the Sunday Mirror, Paul Connew, who I used to work with in my early radio days as well. Paul, great to see you. MPs are going to rather extraordinary lengths to get re-elected. Injections, tell me more.
When this story popped up on my Mail on the Sunday feed, I thought I checked my watch to make sure it wasn't April the 1st. But apparently, a couple of contenders for the future post-election leadership of the Tory party have been taking this so-called wonder drug, Ozempic, which apparently provides sudden and drastic weight loss, including one who's supposed to have collapsed on the floor of a bar in the Commons, and with medics having to be called. And, I mean,
that doesn't sound like Ozempic.
Surreal.
That sounds like Blue Nun, but anyway, that's another story. Why are these MPs trying to get slim?
Apparently, because they are planning to, if the election is lost, which well, the opinion poll would suggest it will be, there will, of course, be a contest for the future leadership of the Tory party. If the Tory party survives in its current form, I'm presuming these are male contenders rather than female. It isn't quite specific from the story, but seemingly they think they're a little too chubby, so it should be more streamlined to be fit to become Rishi Sunak's successor.
Well, Paul, you definitely don't need the Ozempic. You're as fit as a butcher's dog. Let's bring my pundits in if we can, Paul. We've got Sajila Kershi, Diana Moran and Neil Wallace. Diana, do you think, I mean, of course, you are the Green Goddess, health guru, fitness and nutrition expert. Do you think it's important that our politicians are lean and slim?
I think it's important that everybody is as lean and slim as they can be. And certainly people who are there in the public eye, yes, they should look after themselves.
What do you think, Diana, as an expert on these fitness, nutrition, what do you make of these injections? Is that the answer? Do you welcome this new invention?
Well, I'm told that they work, so that's something, but I'm also told that they cost an awful lot of money, and the moment you don't use them, the weight comes back, unless, of course, you've changed your habits.
Yes, Neil Wallace, will Britain ever elect a fat Prime Minister again?
I hope not.
Why?
Boris Johnson?
Isn't that fattest?
Well, it might be fattest, but it's... Diana makes a very good point, really. Our political leaders are public figures, examples to us in every way. And the Tory party had a party chairman not that long ago who was quite simply enormous, and I used to it did occur to me that he's actually, if you believe in the sort of NHS, you would think, why aren't you following it? But the important matter is really what these drugs can do is you can get you down to a size whereby you can change your lifestyle and you can maintain that, but changing the lifestyle is what matters.
OK, what do you think, Sajila?
OK, so firstly, like, they're failing us in every other aspect. So really, looking trim up to the elections is hardly going to cut it. It's not going to make any difference. And Ozempic, I can never say that name. That drug.
Ozempic.
Ozempic, yeah. Is for diabetes, and I've got type 2 diabetes, and I'm actually waiting to get some. And it's either that or you get the gastric, which can reduce the insulin as well. It's known to reduce insulin. And it disgusts me that if politicians are using it for, just vanity's sake. Really? Like, stop it. You're not pop stars. You're supposed to be leading this country. Like, try and find another way. Don't use up supplies that are supposed to be going to people who actually need it.
And now, Paul Connew, an unwelcome headline in the Sunday Times. Rishi Sunak overtakes King Charles In terms of wealth, this is the Sunday Times Rich List 2024. Could that be politically damaging?
I think it's very tricky. I think it's one accolade, if you call it an accolade, in the Sunday Times Rich List that Rishi Sunak probably wouldn't like to be heavily publicised, which of course it is being. When you're the Prime Minister, lagging behind in the polls, although he's a very slim Prime Minister, but with an increasingly slimmer majority, he's now richer than King Charles, according to the Sunday Times Rich List, which isn't good when you're fighting an election with the cost of living crisis at the top of it, of the agenda, when your wife, until not so long ago, was a non-dom beneficiary. I think this one won't play well on the doorstep, and the Tories at the moment need people on the doorstep reacting positively rather than negatively, and I think this will only up the negative count.
Do you think about this, Paul, that do you think essentially Sunak is too rich now to win the next election? Could it be a decisive factor?
I don't think it'll be I think to an extent his wealth is accounted for in the public mind, although this will remind them. And it'll be interesting to see whether Labour target his wealth. They've done it at times at PMQs. Starmer has alluded to it. He's out of touch, etc. I think it is damaging for Sunak, but there are plenty of other things damaging to Sunak. But I do, in a new book I'm a co-author of, out in July, on previewing the general election, we do look at his wealth and how much that is a negative. And I think he would rather not have been figuring in this list. I mean, his wealth went up about 150 million in the last 12 months, the time when, over this Parliament, the standard of living of the average Brit has gone down to a record low.
OK. Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You must come and see us and tell us about the book in July when it comes out, Paul. Diana Moran, does it matter that the Prime Minister is rich?
I think that it puts a bit of a divide between him and us, the ordinary people. I have to admire him because, as we were talking about earlier, he is a self-made man. So you have to admire him for that. But nevertheless, too much money, I think, could... in my mind, it puts a divide.
Couple of seconds on this one, Neil. How do the Tories, airbrush this problem away? Is there a solution? What can they say to make it better?
Very difficult. I think it's an easy stick to hit him with. The truth is he is a self-made man. He's a very, very clever businessman. And you just have to take the backstory about being, the son of a chemist in Southampton. Yeah,
that's it. I think he's a great British success story.
He's a wonderful British success story. You're absolutely right.
Paul, listen, thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch up with you soon. Paul Connew, thank you to Sir Gillette, Neil and Diana. Most importantly, you for your company at home and on the radio, on TV. We're back tomorrow at 9. Headliners is next. Here's the weather with Catherine.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Into Sunday, we'll see showers easing, but it's going to be a murky start before plenty of warm sunshine. So higher pressure situated out towards the west, low pressure further towards the east, and in between, not too much going on, a lot of light winds around. So the showers that we've seen today across Wales and parts of the southwest will generally fade, especially across Scotland as well. But elsewhere, plenty of dry weather, clear spells, but we will see low cloud returning for parts of Scotland and the southeast of England. But otherwise, temperatures holding up at around 10 or 11 degrees in the towns and cities. So to start on Sunday, it's going to be a murky start for some of us with low cloud, mist and fog, especially for parts of the southeast of England and East Anglia. Further towards the west, though, plenty of bright skies to start the day, and that transferring across parts of Wales and the north of England. But across Scotland, especially further east you go, a lot of cloud to start the day, with low cloud lingering across those coastal regions. And further towards the north, cloud thick enough for some patchy rain and drizzle. So throughout the rest of Sunday, any low cloud, mist and fog should generally lift and break away to leave plenty of sunshine on offer for most of us. It will stay rather cloudy across parts of Scotland, and here we could see a few showers, and especially across that northeastern coast, once again feeling cool here with low cloud. But in the sunshine, temperatures recovering nicely up to 24, possibly 25 degrees. Monday's a similar picture to start with. We'll see plenty of low cloud, mist and fog around, but once again that should break away, leaving plenty of sunshine, a dry day on offer for most of us. We'll see some showers developing, but as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday, turning more unsettled with showers or perhaps even some longer spells of rain.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at GBNews.